So, in the art school Chumash with Rashi, we're on page 290. This is chapter 26, verse 34 in the book of Genesis. Now, I want to change our strategy a little bit. Up until now, we've been reading Rashi, and we've been showing how Rashi looked at the verse and made the comment that he made. Now I want to start by looking at the verse and see if we can figure out on our own what might need comment, what might need to be explained. If we can't, I mean to say if you can't, then we'll read Rashi and then we'll go back to the verse and seeing what Rashi said, try to figure out what in the verse moved him to make a comment. The goal is to be able to read a verse and try to figure out what needs to be explained. And it would be wonderful when you get to the point where you can anticipate Rashi by saying, well, here's a problem in the verse, and I know it needs to be explained, and I expect Rashi to explain it for me. Or at the very least, that when you read the Rashi, that you can go back to the verse and figure out what moved him. And then you learn to become more sensitive to what's going on in the verse. So, this verse says, when Esau was 40 years old, he took as a wife Yehudi's daughter of Be'eri the Hittite, Basma's daughter of Elul the Hittite. They were a provocation of the spirit to Isaac and to Rebekah. Now, I think it's quite hard to figure out what might be troublesome here, because the trouble isn't localized to this verse. If you know other verses and you know the way the Torah expresses itself, and particularly you know other incidents in the lives of the patriarchs, you'll see that one thing in this verse is unusual. Anybody have a clue? Okay, let's take a look at Rashi. And of course, what's called the Dibur Maskil, his quotation from the verse partly gives it away. So this is now in the heavy print at the bottom half of the page, under number 34. 40 years old, Esau has been compared to a swine, as it says. A swine of the wood shall devour it, and that is understood to be speaking about Esau. Now, why would he be compared to a pig? Well, see, your English translator, you want to use the word pig because how can you use the word pig in a Chumash? You can hear I wouldn't be convinced by that sensitivity. At any rate, because the rabbinic tradition says that the pig has a certain self-presentation. When he lays down, he's quiet, he's rested, he stretches forth his hooves, because a pig has split hooves. And split hooves are one of the signs of being kosher. And the other sign of being kosher is chewing your cud, which, if you're not eating, doesn't show. So he could, under these conditions, pass himself off as kosher. Stretches forth his hooves as if to say, see that I am pure. So these two, the descendants of Esau, the Romans, rob and take forcibly and display themselves as if they are decent, because they have laws, they have a legal system, they have rules, but behind the cover of their laws, they behave in gross immorality. They learned this trait from their forebear Esau. Now, what in this person Esau's life makes him similar to the swine? All the first 40 years of his life, Esau would snatch women away from their husbands, committing adultery, and violate them. When he became 40 years old, he said, My father married a woman when he was 40 years old. I too will do so. So what's going on here? What's going on in the verse? Where's Rashi coming from? Why does he bring all this in? Remember, Rashi's purpose is pshat.
That's why he's saying it's the same as the pig who's like stretching out its hooves.
Yeah, but what in the verse motivated Rashi to give this whole explanation? Imagine reading the verse and putting yourself into Rashi's shoes and thinking, oh, wow, look at that. That needs to be explained. There's some problem here that really, is off the charts, and I have to say something in order to explain it. What is he explaining? What in the verse is difficult or requires help?
I suppose the thing would be, before, I guess, he wouldn't let him know that he was out womanizing, but now I'm gonna get married now that I'm 40, let you guys know that I'm trying to be proper, I guess.
You're already giving the explanation. I want to know what is it in the verse that prompts an explanation to be given. What's difficult? So, since Rashi quotes the words 40 years old, those are the words that are setting him off. Now, what in those words beg a question? So there's two things here. First of all, why do we need to know how old he was? Who cares? And second of all, maybe always, or almost always, in the Chumash, when you say A happened and B happened, it's not just a list of things that happened. A is given because it's partly the cause of B. It's the reason for B. It's not just a random collection of events that took place. Here, the implication is he was 40, and because he was 40, that's why he went to get married. Wow. Is 40 some magic age? I know, Ben Arbim Labina, Chazal say. 40, you're wise and clever, and that's the time to get married. No, surely not, right? So Rashi takes the idea, knowing Esau's character, which we saw a few times ago, that Esau's wants to know how to hunt, he knows how to deceive. He thinks, he's saying, what is it in Esau's mind that the number 40 says, 40 is the time to get married, and also is consistent with his character of being a deceiver. Now you understand the explanation where it's coming from. So what does he say? Well, I'm trying to present a certain false appearance to my father. I want to look like I'm, following my father's footsteps. Up until now, I haven't been married. What have I been doing? Oh, don't worry. I've been busy on the side. I haven't been idle, right? But my father doesn't know that. And now, when I'm his age, the age when he got married, I'm going to also get married to show him that I'm walking in his footsteps. That explains why 40 is there. It explains why is a cause of his getting married, and it also does so in a way that's consistent with his character. But that's where Rashi's coming from. The verse says something here which is, number one, unnecessary, and number two seems to be that A is the cause of B, where A and B seem to be totally unrelated. And Rashi feels that it is related. Yeah.
I was just to bring up the point that the 40 paralleled Isaac. He got married at 40. So it's 3 years after the altar.
2 years after? Oh,
the sacrifice. He was 37, I think, right?
37, yeah.
2 years after, so he would be 40 then. Yeah, but you said the point around it. So.
Okay. Okay, it's clear what I'm saying? Okay, let's go on. Yeah, okay, I'm not going to do that, Rashi. Fine. Now this, we saw already the case, the sale of the birthright. This now is a much more complex event, which is where Jacob takes the blessing that Isaac wants to give to Esau. And my focus is on Rashi, but I'm going to add certain things in to make it understandable. Was when Isaac had become old, his eyes dimmed from seeing, that he summoned his older son and said to him, "My son," and he said to him, "Here I am." Okay, let's see Rashi. This is on the next page, 291. His eyes dimmed. Now, Rashi here gives three explanations. One is through the smoke of these wives, for they would raise smoke and burn incense to idols. We saw last time, Rashi said, the reason why Isaac was upset with the marriage is because these women were idol worshippers. So, one explanation as to his eyes dimmed, what caused his blindness. This is what's exercising Rashi. What caused his blindness is the smoke that came from the women. Alternatively, when he was bound upon the altar, and his father wanted to slaughter him, at that time the heavens opened up, and the ministering angels saw what was happening to him, and they were crying. Their tears descended and fell on Isaac's eyes. This is why his eyes dimmed. That's the second explanation. Alternatively, his eyes dimmed so that Jacob should take the blessings. Because in this incident, Jacob is going to impersonate Esau, and if Isaac were sighted, if he were able to see, it never could happen. Now, I want you to think carefully, sort of abstractly, and tell me, what feature, what element do all three explanations have in common? For this, you have to think very abstractly.
Maybe each one has to do with the same reason. Meaning, it seems like only the last one is saying that so Yaakov should receive the brachos, but each one was for that. The end goal was for the reason that Yaakov should get the brachos.
The first two don't have anything to do with getting the blessings.
Possibly, like in each scenario, someone's crying over the loss of someone. So in the first case, where the wives are burning incense for idol worship, you could say Isaac's possibly sad because he almost lost his son to marrying idol worshippers. In the case of the altar, Avram had to sacrifice his son, cried losing his son. And in the case of the angels, they're crying because they're losing, like let's say Isaac, like a Sadiq. In all cases, there's sadness, there's mourning over someone.
I want to say the three explanations are, the first one is the wives burning incense to idols. There I hear their sadness, and certainly a loss, and so forth and so on. The second one is only the angels crying, not Abraham crying. Doesn't mention anything about Abraham crying at all. It's the angels crying, and the angels' tears falling into Isaac's eyes.
What's the third one then?
Right, and the third one was in order that he should be able to get the blessings. Right? Those are the three explanations.
Maybe because each one of them has to do with maybe a loss of some sort.
Okay, let me start slightly more primitively. Notice that the first two mention the cause, the physical cause of his loss of eyesight. Right? The one is smoke, the other is tears that fall into his eyes. The third doesn't at all. What does the third mention?
Which is a benefit almost, as in, not benefit, but it mentions the effectiveness of his
Effectiveness, benefit. Let's use a more, I think, perhaps a slightly more opposite word. Reason. Reason why. What is the goal, the function of his becoming blind? So the third one is only, I would put it this way, a ruchniistic explanation. It's an explanation in terms of divine providence. That means that the first two shouldn't be thought of as casual causal explanations. Let's see. There was a deficiency of vitamin E in the water. That might have done it. or maybe there were sandstorms that just interfered with vision. That might have done it. Or no, we're not looking at causes in that sense at all. We're looking at some kind of spiritual reason or effect of the blindness. Some kind of, so now the smoke of the incense got into Isaac's eyes. When you cook food, there will be smoke. In his household, food was cooking. He ate fresh game every day that his son Esau brought him. That food had to be cooked. Somehow the smoke of those didn't get into his eyes. Now what do you think? The wives are burning incense to the idols in Isaac's living room, right in front of him? Probably not. They're off in their own tent or some sanctuary, or something or other, some kind of idol worship location, right? So we're not talking now, closer to what you said, we're not talking now about the physical smoke getting in his eyes. It's because they were burning incense to idols and it raised smoke. And of course, the smoke gets in your eyes, it interferes with vision. That's what caused his eyes to dim. So that's going to be something that's related to Esau, and it is the immediately preceding verses, which is part of what motivates Rashi's use of this explanation. These explanations all come from rabbinic sources. Well, one thing you do in a text is, if you want to explain a text and you have an idea coming from an immediately adjacent text, that's a very good reason for thinking that's what it's following on that text. The last explanation concerns the ensuing text. This is the introduction to the story of the blessing, which requires Isaac to be blind, otherwise the story can't be told. And there, it's for the sake of Jacob getting the blessing, which by rights is his in terms of divine justice. So again, it's a divine calculation. Now, in the case of the middle one, I worked on this hard, and I didn't get it myself. My Rebbe, I think, gave me the idea. So he's there at the Akedah, at the sacrifice. Now it's interesting, it says, the heavens opened and the angels saw. We think of the heavens opening so we can see into heaven. Here the vision is the opposite. They can't see down unless the heavens open. That in itself could be a subject of a discussion. They see what's going on. They understand something about Isaac, something about his greatness. They see him about to be slaughtered. They're overcome with grief, and they cry, and the tears fall into his eyes. Now, what's the message in this? And what has it got to do with the story? So, Robinson said, he had a vision of something extraordinary. This, the angel's tears falling into his eyes, means that he saw this. Having seen something like that, he now is pushed onto another dimension, onto another sort of, he's dialing a different frequency on the electromagnetic band. And when he's focused on that frequency, that causes him to lose sensitivity to certain things going on around him. Part of the story depends upon Isaac not correctly perceiving Esau. Had he correctly perceived Esau, he would have seen for himself that Esau wasn't worthy of the blessing. He doesn't see that. So that's what this explains. This explains in the story why it is that he doesn't see what's going on. Even though he knows that these women who his son married are terrible, and he was disturbed by it, it says in the immediately preceding verse, but not enough. Not enough for him to penetrate into Esau to the extent to see that he wasn't worthy of the blessing. So you have three explanations here, all of which cite, I would say, reasons in terms of divine providence, and the reasons are relevant to the story at hand. Yeah, question.
Maybe it's hinted in the fact that it says that the smoke is raising, and that the smoke is raising and that the tears are descending, right? It's like a juxtaposition.
Let me see. Let me try that and see if it works here. Good try, but the Hebrew doesn't have raising. I don't know why they put raised here. me'ashnot umaktiros. The word in Hebrew has nothing to do with going up. I don't know where they get that for the translation. But that's, you're doing the right job. You're taking the word, you're trying to make an idea out of the word, trying to put it into the scenario. It's the right thing to do. Just the translation here doesn't capture it correctly.
What do we translate to? The phrase "great smoke."
Le'ashen, the word, the root of me'ashnos is ayin shin nun, which means smoke. So it's like smoke, either like smoking turkey, treating turkey with smoke, or causing smoke, but doesn't say anything about going up.
Because the smoke usually travels,
It may be so, but it's usually gray, and it usually smells acrid, and so on and so on. There are lots of things that are true of it, but this word doesn't say that true thing about it. We have to be. We're bound by what the words choose to describe. Okay, so that's this Rashi. Okay, now he says. He said to him, that is to say, Isaac said to Esau, "See now, I have aged, I know not the day of my death." Anything bother you in those words?
Why should he know the day of his death?
Why should he know the day of his death? Okay, I think that's going in the right direction.
Why would he be concerned with that now?
Okay, why would we be concerned about it now? You're stepping, that's quite far-reaching, okay, but there's something more primitive here.
What's the relation between him being aged and also the fact that he doesn't know the day of his death?
Yeah, what's the connection? They're like, you know why I don't know the day of my death? Because I've gotten old. Implying, when I was younger I did, see, but I forgot, because my memory's weak now. I mean, how do you put together, I became old and therefore I don't know the day of my death? Nobody knows the day of his death. In fact, when you're 20 years old, you're more ignorant of the day of your death when you're 88, because then you got a few years to, he could have died anyway, been 20 to 88, right? So the connection between the two of them is what's difficult. Now look at what Rashi says. You see that Rashi comes to express exactly that. The Tana Rabbi Shimon Karcha said, if a person approaches his parents' age, i.e. the age at which his parents died, now of course, the ages it should say, either one, because parents usually don't die at the same age, right? He should worry that he might die. When you become up to within 5 years of the death of one of your parents, you should think, maybe my time is coming. And 5 years afterwards. Isaac was 123 years old at this point. He said, well, my mother died at 127. Maybe I'm nearing my end, because this is within 5 years of my mother's death. And therefore, he says, I know that the day of my death, I have reason to think that in this coming period of time, it's more likely that it will die than at other times, because we have a tradition that this is so. You see what Rashi's doing. He's explaining the connection between the two ideas, which in the verse you saw by yourself. It was not obvious. Okay. Now, sharpen, if you please, your gear, your sword, and your bow. Go out to the field and catch game for me. Right. So let's see. Is there anything here? Anything here? Catch your interest?
Why is he asking him to sharpen his gear?
What's the idea? Sharpen your gear, sharpen your sword, your bows, arrows. What does it mean? Well, what does he tell him? Does he know whether it's sharp already or not? Is this look, maybe it's not sharp, I want you to make sure that it's sharp? And then, what difference does it make whether it's sharp or not? Why does he care about that? It's a comment whose purpose in the story doesn't seem to be obvious. He told them to go and hunt. I mean, he tells them at the end of the verse to go and hunt. So he'll take his tools and he'll hunt. So now look at Rashi. Bottom of page 291. Mom is the bottom. This is an expression of honing something to make it sharp. That's because the verb here could mean something entirely different. So Rashi is careful to explain it. Like that word, Masiyah, which we learned in the Mishnah, and Rashi has to go to Mishnaic Hebrew to explain this word in the Chumash, which isn't easy. We do not hone a knife on a festival. You sharpen it upon another one. In other words, don't use I forget what you call them in English, and even in Hebrew. There's a certain, like a piece of metal, which is round and has ridges in it, and you can run the knife along it and it becomes sharper. And then we're told in the festival you can't do that because that's a tool for doing this job. But you can rub one knife against the other, which also could make it sharper. Okay, but the point here is the verb is a verb of sharpening. So now Rashi has to explain why this is important. Isaac said to Esau, "Sharpen your knife and slaughter well, that you should not feed me an unslaughtered carcass." In other words, if you'll learn someday Hilchos Shchita, the knife has to be exquisitely sharp so that the cut will be an absolutely clean cut. No nicks, no tears. A nick or a tear can make the whole cut non-kosher, and then we can't eat the meat. And that requires, there's a whole art to checking the knife by running your thumbnail across the knife to feel if there's any bump whatsoever. Wouldn't be visible to the eye, but you'll be sensible to the touch. You have to sharpen the knife again. So he's telling him, be very careful. Now, that implies that he might not be careful. If he were certain that Esau would be careful, then he wouldn't have had to tell him. So he's taking a precaution, Isaac is, in asking him to sharpen. Okay, now he says, catch game for me. So look at Rashi. This is midway down on 292. Catch game for me from that which is ownerless and not that which is stolen. Catch game really in the Hebrew means to hunt. Hunt it for me. Now, Isaac wants Esau to prepare him lunch. He wants him to bring him lunch. He can't just tell him, bring me an animal and make lunch. He has to tell him, hunt the animal. Why does he care how he gets it? Because left to his own devices, he might get it in an illicit way. Of course, could also buy it if he has money and if there are flocks available. As we'll see, Isaac he himself has flocks right outside not the door, the tent flap, right? No, he wants him to hunt. That will explain later as to why he wants all of that. But he's suspicious that if he doesn't give explicit instructions, that his son will steal it to bring it. And the question might be raised, okay, you give him the instructions, but how does he know he'll follow them? And this is because we saw before that Esau is a hunter, and he brings game for his father. So he's saying to him, I want you to do this in the way that you normally do these things. I want this to be an expression of the way in which you take care of me. But the fact that he says so and doesn't trust it means that there's a certain suspicion there. That's how Rashi is explaining it. Okay, verse 4. Then make delicacies for me, such as I love, and bring it to me, and I will eat, so that my soul may bless you before I die. This is to be a solely Esau production. He has to start by preparing his hunting gear, and then go hunting, and capture the animal, and slaughter it, and then prepare it, cook it, and bring it to his father. It's got to be a one-man job. Not asking him to go and get fresh meat and bring it to his mother, Isaac's wife, Rebecca, and she'll prepare it, which is what happens when Jacob goes in. No, it's got to be your job. Now, I want to point something out here, which helps understand the story. Why does Isaac need lunch before he gives the blessing? Do all this for me so that my soul will bless you. Man, maybe he's hungry. Maybe when you're hungry, it's hard to give a blessing. Then tell Rebecca to give him lunch. What does he have to go and hunt for? And indeed, there is no general requirement that someone should have lunch or dinner or breakfast or hors d'oeuvres or tea in the afternoon before he gives a blessing. At the end of the parsha, Isaac is going to give Jacob a blessing without any lunch at all. Jacob blesses all of his children at the end of his life without any lunch at all. And many other blessings in the Tanakh, lunch is not in the script. Even if you link it, as some do, to an Elisha asks for a musician to come and play music for him because he wasn't in the spiritual focus for prophecy. Well, I haven't spoken about prophecy yet, but still, here Isaac doesn't require it when he blesses Jacob. There's something going on in the blessing from Isaac to Esau that requires lunch. And as I said 90 seconds ago, this lunch has got to be prepared in the way that Esau every day brings lunch for his father. It's got to be the same proposition. So the commentaries say that Esau had problems. We know that he had problems. And in order for Isaac to give him a blessing, he's got to connect with him. They've got to be on the same spiritual page. So he says to Esau, the one thing you do, the oral tradition credits Esau with this, the one thing you do that's truly spiritual is the honor that you show me. Keep it up. Do that. Do that. Do it in a spectacular fashion. When you perform that mitzvah, then I can be on the same page with you, and I can give you a blessing. That will create a spiritual connection between me and you, so that you can receive the blessing. That's why he's requiring him to do that, and that's why he wants to make sure that it's a perfect performance. Because if there's any failure of the performance, then they're not going to be on the same page. Yeah.
Well, maybe another part of Yitzchak's eyes, dimming was in order not to see the evil in Esau.
So let's see now. Let's just see what we're doing here. What we're trying to do is explain the verses and explain Rashi. Rashi brought 3 reasons. So I was explaining Rashi's 3 reasons. Okay? But I did say one of those. I said in the name of my Rebbitzin, when it says that the angel's tears fell in Isaac's eyes, the question will be, what has that got to do with this story? So there are 3 explanations in the rabbinic literature. Rashi doesn't bring all of the rabbinic literature. Sometimes he brings none. Sometimes he's selective. The rabbis make 3 comments on a certain verse, and he brings only 2 and leaves the 3rd one out. Sometimes he ignores the rabbinic tradition altogether, and he makes his own comments. Why would he bring what happened years before, when the sacrifice took place? Why would he bring that as his explanation for what's happening in this story? And the answer that she gave was, the cause of his loss of sight was his vision of the angels and receiving the tears from their eyes, and thereby being drawn into a certain higher focus. That was the cause. And the reason for the cause was so that he shouldn't see the evil in Esau. And the reason why he shouldn't see it is so that Jacob should get the blessing. That's the connection that connects Rashi's middle comment to this story, without which you wonder why he brought it here. Yeah.
If he would see the evil in Esau, he wouldn't give him the blessing anyway.
Okay, that's good. This scenario has a whole bunch of details in it that have to be worked out. Let's put this on the table. If he would see, then he wouldn't have had the desire to give him the blessing in the first place. And then the blessing would have gone to Jacob automatically. So, Adrabah, let him see. We'll answer that. We need some more information on the table to answer it. That's a good question. There's several other good questions that will come up. And there's one way of looking at it that I heard from Tzvika Shalevsky, he should be well, 40 years ago. And I've been teaching it over and over again since then. Okay, now, verse 5. Rebekah was listening as Isaac spoke to Esau, his son. Esau went to the field to catch game to bring. Any alarm bells? Any flags waving there?
Are you supposed to bring back to her instead of doing it himself?
Okay, you're offering a comment to interpret. I'm asking what in the verse needs help. So you already found it. To now articulate that. What's bothering you that you said that? What?
Because it's like talking about now Rebecca was listening, and pretty much said like Esau went to the field to bring, or to catch game to bring, as opposed to the.
You're on the wrong channel. You're looking for explanations. I'm asking what problem in the verse would prompt someone to look for an explanation. Don't start looking for explanation. Don't tell me what the verse means. Explain to me what's problematic in the verse that needs some kind of interpretation.
Why was Rebecca listening?
No. Well, I mean, I suppose you could say that. When you're married, you'll know the answer to that. Sarah also listened when the travelers came to Abraham. It's important for women to know what's going on with their husbands, right? No, but listen. Let me give you a trick. Right? One thing you want to make sure is that none of the words in the verse are superfluous. So here's what you do in your mind. You think, if I erased this word, what would I lose? Would there be anything in the content of the verse that I would lose if I erased this word? The answer is no. Then you raise your hand and say, well, what's this word doing in the verse, right?
It's to bring, I guess?
Yeah. Suppose we didn't have to bring. He went to the field to hunt. Would we misinterpret something? Would we think he's going to hunt it and invest it in AT&T, or sell it on the open market, or boil it down and use its skin for football? He's been told to go out and hunt and bring it here and bring it and prepare it and give it to his father. So of course he's going to bring it, right? Question: why did the Torah say to bring when it's obvious that was that would be the purpose of it? And that's what Rashi is going to comment on. Yeah.
But isn't it just to show that he's doing it for his father? You say, if he just says, Esau, just caught game, it doesn't specify, the exact purpose. It's to show this, in this instance, he's specifically doing it for his father, to bring to his father.
Well, why not say to hunt for his father? His father said to hunt. He hasn't done it yet. He said he went to the field to hunt, to bring, right?
No, his father said to catch game for me.
Right?
So he's doing this. He just says to catch game, to bring, to show it's for him.
Again, but the word "me" isn't in the verse, right? Or for Isaac isn't in the verse. You're understanding to bring to mean to bring to Isaac, right?
Yes.
So if you leave out to bring and it says he went to the field to catch game, I say the same thing. He went to catch game for Isaac. You're putting it for Isaac, so you should put it for Isaac without the to bring. Right? He was given an instruction, and he was given instruction to do X, Y, Z so that Isaac will bless him. Surely he's not going to be distracted by a football game, Right? So I don't think that the words to bring here add anything that you wouldn't have known. At least that's the way it seems. So Rashi, look at verse 5. To catch game, to bring. What is meant by the seemingly superfluous to bring? Now your helpful friendly translator here puts in the seemingly superfluous, but he's right. Rashi asks, what is meant by to bring? It's not that he says to bring might mean to catch butterflies or to simmer a stew or to go swimming. What is the purpose of those words? Now look what he says. He says, Isaac said to Esau, if he will not find game, he will bring it from that which is stolen. Yeah, I'm going to hunt. I'm going to hunt, comma, and also going to bring. If my father wants the food, he won't know whether I stole it or not. Okay, he told me to hunt. I will go hunting. But if all the animals are on strike, they're all hiding, and I can't find any, then I'll bring it some other way. So the verse is indicating that his intentions. But that's okay. That's the way you have to think about the problems. Now watch. 6. Rebecca, the had said is a problem. I'm not going to deal with that. Said to Jacob her son, saying, behold, I heard your father speaking to your brother Esau, saying, bring me some game and make me some delicacies that I will eat, and I will bless you before Hashem prior to my death. That report of Rebecca says, I was listening, I overheard the conversation, and here's what your father said. Verse 7. Is her report in verse 7 exactly what Isaac said in verses 3 and 4?
No.
Why not?
He didn't say bless before Hashem.
Right. Nowhere in verses 3 and 4 does he say, I'll bless you before Hashem.
So bless you.
Just bless you. So you have to ask yourself, why would she add something that he didn't say? Why would she, so to speak, misquote him? Right? That jumps right out at you. Now look at Rashi at the bottom of the page. Before Hashem, this means, with his permission, that he should agree to what I am doing. Can you imagine? Well, let me add something else before I go to the end. Look at the under the line where the translator has his own comments. Look at number 7. Lifnei Hashem literally would mean in Hashem's presence, right? I think here note number 7 is really sharp. He took it from one of the standard commentaries on Rashi. Because if you thought Lifnei Hashem would mean in Hashem's presence, that would be stating the obvious. Everything takes place in Hashem's presence. Hashem is present everywhere. So there would be no content in saying it should be Lifnei Hashem. Everything is Lifnei Hashem. So it's got to mean something else. So that's part of what pushes Rashi to comment, and also the fact that it wasn't. So now, this is a crucial element in understanding the story. What is a blessing? What does it mean to give a blessing? In particular, what does it mean when the father gives a blessing to his child? There are at least two, different ways to understand it. One is it's like a prayer. Father is praying for his son, and if he's near to his death, so then he has certain powers that he doesn't have at other times in his life, and he's praying that something should happen for his son. That's one explanation. The other explanation is that it's prophecy. For certain fathers, it could be prophecy. She's saying to Jacob, this is going to be prophecy. I know what your father means. I know what your father understands he's doing. He's doing it as prophecy. This is going to be crucial. This is going to be crucial, as you'll see, that Jacob needs to know this, because it makes it possible for him to do what he's going to do in certain ways. So she puts it in because that's definitely what Isaac intended, and I would say more than that. Esau understands that also. He understands what his father means. So if she wants to say, this is what Isaac intends, this is what Esau understands, and you need to understand it also, because it's the scenario that I'm going to suggest to take place leans on the fact that it's going to be prophecy. Okay, she's introducing this to make the succeeding text work. Okay, we have time for one more. And by the way, I just want to point out the vocabulary 8. There's no Rashi on it, if I remember correctly. You're right. See now, my son, heed my voice to that which I command you. Heed also means to obey. She's speaking very strongly. Go now to the flock and fetch for me from there 2 choice young goats, and I will make of them delicacies for your father as he loves. Then you'll bring them in and you'll get the blessing. Okay, now, anything in verse 9 which strikes you? Can you use the suggestion I made 90 seconds ago? Is there anything in 9 that you could erase and not lose any content?
She didn't just say now go to the flock and fetch. You could say go and fetch 2 choice young goats.
Okay, she wouldn't have to say go to the flock. Maybe Rashi will explain that as well. Why should she tell them where to go?
Also, it's good to include the part that it says, I will make delicacies for your father as he loves. I mean, it's odd to put as he loves. I don't see the relevance of that, but I guess that's not the redundancy part that you're looking for.
Well, you see, that's important because in the instruction, in verse 4, Isaac specifically specified as I love. So she's got to, that's certainly relevant. But something else there, one little particle there that seems to be you could erase. How about for me? She's giving the instruction, isn't she?
Yeah.
What she wants is that he should bring it and she'll cook it. Suppose you erased for me, what would you lose?
You wouldn't lose it.
Seems like all the content would be there even if you erased that. So now look at Rashi. Verse 9. For me, they are that which is mine, and they are not stolen. For thus had Isaac written, stipulated for her in her marriage contract, to take 2 young goats every day. Maybe when she says, take goats from the flock, it's theft. Whose goats are they? Presumably they're Isaac's goats. He's taking his father's goats without his father's permission. Didn't Isaac say to Esau specifically, not from something that's stolen? Jacob knows that his father wouldn't tolerate that. She's saying to take. By the way, there's a halacha on this. If a person's collecting charity, knocks on a door, and only the wife is home, and she offers him money, he has to make a calculation. Is this the kind of money that normal husbands make available to their wives for their discretion to give out? She's offering him 5 shekels. If she offers him 150 shekels, he's got to be suspicious that she decided that this on her own. She doesn't have permission to take it from her husband, and she's guilty of misusing her husband's finances. And he should check before he receives the money. See, here she says, I'm telling you that this is mine. It's mine because in my marriage contract it's stipulated that I can take 2 for myself every day. So don't worry. So, kach li means take from that which is mine by right. And she's laying to rest the possibility that it might be illicit, inappropriate. But you see that the for me becomes very, very important. And Rashi has to tell you what it's doing there. And when he does so, he fills in an element of the story that's, okay, I think you're probably catching on. This is a skill not only for Rashi and Chumash, but our literature is written in the same style all the time. If by the way, who does this well? Mathematicians do this well. You have a theorem in mathematics. If A, B, and C, then D. A mathematician will first think, if I took A out and then I had B and C, would it work? No, why not? If I took B out and had A and C, would it work? Why not? If I only had B and C, would it work? Why not? Because the theorem is stated if A, B, and C, all three of them. So you need all three of them. So test it and see that you really need all three of them. That kind of thinking in careful textual presentation is absolutely necessary. So that's part of what you're learning here. Yeah.
Just a quick question. Why does it sometimes have the Rashi in brackets?
I think it's based on text. Not all texts have that Rashi. Yeah.
Is it also similar like in science, where you just the same process of eliminating certain things, see if it works? Like
Absolutely, science especially, and there, you sometimes are led to think, wait a minute, something wasn't checked. You ask, under what conditions does this work? Now you take a symmetrical, cylindrical container with a hole, a circular hole in the exact center of the bottom, fill it with water, let it sit there for a couple of days so the water is absolutely still, and motionless. And then take out the cover of the hole and let the water drip out. And you'll see that the water initiates on its own a counterclockwise spiral. Now, you could try that in New York and in Beijing and in Alaska and in Munich, Germany, and always counterclockwise. You think, wow, look at that. Something funny about still water. When you take the thing out of the center and it's all symmetrical, it starts moving counterclockwise. Except when you try it in Johannesburg, then it's clockwise. Did you dream that being in the northern hemisphere might be an important condition in this phenomenon? You move the southern hemisphere. Does physics change the southern hemisphere? Well, the answer is some things do. Some things do, in particular the direction of rotation does. So you might, if you think about it, where did we try it? How much did we vary it? And what variables did we try? It might occur to you, since it's a spatial motion, and clockwise and counterclockwise are dependent upon handedness, maybe the southern hemisphere, maybe it's different.